O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us. O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf, and people of purified intellect are the drinkers. The milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. So, in the 18th chapter, we've really come back to where we started. This yoga of renunciation, or yoga of wisdom through renunciation. We've come right back where we started, but we'll see if we've come back to it from a different place. Swami Shivananda describes the spiritual path. It often seems like a circle because the same things happen over and over again. The same concepts come, the same experiences, right? They're in a cycle, just like the seasons. Even it seems like the thought patterns and the desires and such, the old seems to come back again. So spiritual path, sadhana, is an intentional shift. We've always thought that we would change our circumstances, but what's being guided is you really can't change the circumstances. The circumstances will change, but they'll continue to change. They won't be stable in the way that you would like to have them to be stable. The only way to have stability is to change the perspective, is to change the inner person. You see the same patterns recurring, right, Umadevi? Yeah. And so it's the inner that has to change. And so right at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, and by the way, Swami Shivananda, he describes spiritual path not as a circle, though. The experiences seem to be in a circle, but if we're intentional and if we're really, really genuinely doing our best to cultivate sattva and handle that difficult situation and do our best to connect to the divine in it, and to really renounce the expectation of fruit, to really do it. The same experiences happen, but he describes intentional spiritual path, sadhana, as a spiral, not a circle. So you see, a circle is just a two-dimensional object, but a spiral is three-dimensional, where one comes back to the same experience, the same point, but with an uplifted inner nature, and comes to a place where they see it instead of finding themselves caught up in it. And being able to see it, are able to come back home, come to freedom. Not any longer being bound by the things that are happening to you. Even the mental patterns. And finally, not being bound by the mental patterns, the mind is able to go back into nature, as it were, to become natural, to become unbound itself. The saints, interestingly, they all have their own personality. But we experience an outer shift that's occurred with them as well. So we've come back to the same place. In chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna wanted to run away. So he wanted to renounce. Because he didn't like what was happening. Yes? He didn't like what was happening. He didn't want to accept that his duty was to do what he was to do, and he wanted to leave it. And how many of us have felt that, right? And so now we've come back full circle after all of this teaching, after all of this showing up for each of us, we come back to the same place. And now Arjuna is asking, so what is proper renunciation? What is the difference between renunciation of action and renunciation of the fruit? Please explain to me what is the difference between these two. What is the renunciation that frees you, and what is the renunciation that binds you? Right? Because what Lord Krishna had told him earlier was, you'll be bound by running away. It won't help you, and it won't help the situation. By the way, it's going to happen anyway. This duty, I'll find someone else to do it, don't worry, because I am that great time. And so one way or another, it'll happen. But you have, and this is what he was telling him at that time, which Arjuna didn't understand. The whole Bhagavad Gita has been to help us in this comprehension and this understanding. But Lord Krishna then told him, no, this duty is your opportunity to be free. You say, I don't want to do it. But what you really want is freedom from doing. And freedom from doing, he explained even then, doesn't mean not doing. It means doing in a certain spirit. Doing in a certain spirit. Engaging in a certain way, with a certain bhava, with a certain attitude about it, and a certain relationship to the fruit of the action. And so this has been the teaching all along in Bhagavad Gita. Now in 18th chapter we come back to it, and now Lord Krishna is explaining in detail, but God willing, most of us in this group have been in this Gita study since chapter 1. Most of us are very close to it. And now, God willing, we find ourselves in a different place with a higher perspective to be able to look and see what's being offered and really be able to comprehend it and apply it in our lives. So,
I was thinking that in our lives, running away could also mean like committing suicide, which just makes it just worse.
Which is the same. It's all the same. It's either tamasic tyaga or rajasic tyaga. That's the typical. And we'll start there again this morning, which is where we ended on Friday morning, with those two sutras, and then continue on. So Sutra 6 was, however, it is essential, Arjuna, that these actions too be performed without attachment to the fruits. And then number 7, actually it is wrong to renounce any duty that is appropriate for you to do. Such so-called renunciation comes from ignorance or tamas. So anything that comes to you that's appropriate for you to do, to renounce it is tamasic renunciation. And that's a binding type of renunciation. In other words, it will keep coming to you to do, and the more we refuse it, the darker it becomes, because tamas also spirals. Right? Abandoning a duty because it is or may be difficult or painful is rajasic detachment and does not bring about merit. Now this is, and we all have a lot of experience with this one, we have to say, and we should admit to ourselves, we have a lot of experience, because the pains come. This pain, that pain, emotional pains, physical pains, yes? And look at how easy it is to say, I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to do today because I'm in pain. Yes? Umadevi, you here? Yeah. And that's rajasic, and that's also binding, and it also causes suffering. Because you're not allowing yourself to take the freedom from the action and to do one's duty, whatever is one's duty. Duty is not bad. Duty is our opportunity to be free. from this perspective. Our duty is our opportunity to be free, right? And to do it when there's terrible pain or emotional issue or this, and still to be able, because you're tested far more in that condition, aren't you, than when everything's good?
Yeah. Mm.
So if you look at the work that you're doing and the effect of it in the psyche, do you see how much more powerful that is when you can actually find the wherewithal and still connect to the divine and still do it anyway? Do you see? And to refuse to do it, if you look at the psyche then, do you see what that does? More of the same, right? It's this entitlement. Oh, Namah Shivaya, hello dear. It's so good to be back with you. Come here. Good morning. Hi, love you. Do you see? We struggle with entitlement. And it's the entitlement, the sense of entitlement, that's killing us. I mean, you're going to die physically. But this sense of entitlement, this sense of self-righteousness is just an ego sense. So it's the false, right? So how long do you want to die separate? This is the whole message of Easter, you know. The entirety of the work of Jesus is about this. One way or another. And so his message is, so do what's righteous and accept the crucifixion that comes with it. Die to yourself. And you shall be as you always were, eternal. But it's a kind of rising up. It's the hero's journey. Yes? And so what we struggle with are these tamasic and rajasic tendencies within us. And if we honor either of them, and you see how one's tamasic and one's rajasic, because it's an assertion of a little I in my pain, but the pain is also a part of our imaginary being. There's not really physical pain. We look at this. There's not. You can say emotional pain. Yes. It's fine. Then it can all be emotional pain. There's dissolution of the body. But when you look at what's happening within the body, even when the dissolution is there, the pain still is in the nervous system, in the emotional systems, in the mental. It's not ever in the body. It's not in the prana, right? It's not in the breath. It's not in the intelligence. And we don't say it to minimize it. We say it to locate it, right? To see where it is. So that pain, and the saints, my God, they give us such beautiful examples. I look up here at Saint Therese de Lisieux. So do we know the story of Saint Therese? Most of us have watched the story of a soul. And we know that just tuberculosis, at a young age, she was in convent and just racking, and she just took every bit of it and redoubled her commitment to be with God. So, and that commitment became the fire of burning all of the worldly attachments and worldly bondages. So, but if she would have said, I don't feel good, I need this, I need that, I can't show up today, I can't do this, I can't, then what gets stronger? Instead of the connection to the divine, what gets stronger?
Dependent on things.
Right? So, now, I'll give you an example. Yesterday we were at the Center for Spiritual Living in Yuma, and there's a dear soul there, Carolyn, and you met her briefly, but she's very quiet. She just comes and serves. She had her mask on, and she told me, she said, I may not be able to stay very long because when I start coughing, it will scare people. That's sattvic renunciation. You see the difference? I have to go because I don't feel good, I'm tired, I have pains. Whenever I cough, it hurts my throat. So I have to leave. That's one. Yes? She doesn't even think that. She came because it's Easter, but she knows that the coughing may start, and when coughing starts, that will scare people, and she doesn't want to scare anyone. You see the difference? You recognize that? Very sattvic, very pure, and so she lives in a pure world. She lives in a pure world without judgment. She deals with a lot of the stuff that happens. Her husband left the body 1 year ago, just about 1 year ago, John, and also a very sattvic being. And the sattva has to be cultivated. It's not accident. So abandoning a duty because it's difficult or rajasic or painful is rajasic. Swami Satchidananda says, sometimes we do abandon or drop our duties. If you're a tamasic person, you won't even know why you let it go. But if you're a rajasic person, you know it's too painful or too difficult for you. At least you know why, but your reasoning isn't sound. It's mentally escapist. And don't be down on yourselves. But in our introspection, we need to be able to see it. If we're going to see the way, we have to see what it is that we're working with and what it is that we need to uplift, right? Yes? And so, if you want to be able to stand in the divine, in your highest nature, no matter what happens, then you have to be able to withstand the inner storms. Yes? Because then you become, as it were, the master of the inner world and therefore the outer world as well, by default. But you have to be able to withstand the inner storms to be able to stand. Because really what we're saying is all of the storms are inner storms. They're not outer storms. They appear to be outer storms. But the fact that you're being buffeted about means really it's an inner storm. And so to be able to stand really when whatever is happening, then we have to be able to stand in the midst of the inner storm and to stick it out. And we can. But we have to hold something to hold on to. And that's also the message in the Gita, of course, is we have something to hold on to. It's not a thing. Our own highest self, Lord, Creator, however we relate. But we have to hold on to ourselves, as it were. We have to hold on to ourselves and be strong in ourselves and not get buffeted and not get thrown about. And these pains and all of these terrible things that happen to us, you see, they're opportunities for us in this way. And this is also Christ's message. This is also the Easter message. This hero's journey is the emergence of the self within the self. So many times we want to run away from certain places or actions, so we bring in some nice philosophy. We say, he quotes, I'm a renunciate, so I'm renouncing this. We're not renouncing with understanding, but out of fear. That escapism will blind us. So here Krishna indirectly points out that Arjuna's renunciation of his part of the war, what Arjuna was wanting to renounce earlier, is rajasic. Arjuna just wants an excuse not to fight. He feels sad about killing his own kith and kin, but that's not the proper reason to renounce. And then to compare, Lord Krishna says, pure sattvic non-attachment is carrying out your responsibility simply because it is the right thing to do, while at the same time renouncing attachment to the fruits of your efforts. After you renounce all personal attachments, you will be filled with purity and clearly discern the nature of dispassion. or yoga. Then all remaining doubts will fall away, and you feel neither aversion nor attraction towards unpleasant or pleasant work. So what he's describing is the result of this, the result of staying committed, staying the course, continuing to tune into the light, continuing to resolve, continuing to do our best. The result of it is that we come into the daylight. And no longer do we have to deal with this inner urge that says, I will only do what I like and only under likable circumstances. And I will not do what I do not like or not likable circumstances. That inner urge system, we come out into the purity, and that inner urge system falls away. And where we end up in a place is we enjoy to do what we are to do. We simply enjoy doing what we are to do. I would say we simply enjoy being with the Lord. Sattvic Tyaga, this is Swami, Sattvic Tyaga, pure non-attachment, means your action is done merely because it ought to be done, letting go of attachment and also the fruits of the act. Such a person performs work as a duty. Sometimes we do karma yoga, selfless service, and remind ourselves, I'm not interested in the fruit. But that disinterest sometimes carries over even into the action itself. And he quotes, I'm not interested in the fruit, so I'm not interested in doing it. Well, either, it's just karma yoga. And how many times have I heard from within myself and all around, it's not a big deal, it's just karma yoga. But it is a big deal. Because it is our opportunity to be free of doership. And this doership, this living under the thraldom of this ego is the pits. Living at the whim of an imaginary person is the worst thing. Living at the whim of raga, dvesha, of I want this, I don't want that. Oh my God, it's a terror. I want to do this, I want to do that. What a terrible world. An ego right now will say, but I don't have big desires. I don't want a lot. What I want is reasonable. Just give me that. And it says to me, bow down at my feet and just give me what I want. Stop this nonsense of trying to be free from me. I'm not so demanding, am I? So he says, but the sattvic renunciate, the true karma yogi, is the one who performs his or her duty as perfectly as possible and at the same time offers the fruits to God, humanity, family, or whomever. It's like giving something to your beloved. You choose the best. If you prepare a room for your special friend, you take care of every minute detail, seeing that it's absolutely clean and beautifully decorated. You enjoy doing it, but not for your own personal sake. It's true, right? Even then, rajas could easily sneak in. You might do it for show or out of pride. See what a beautiful room I'm giving you. To others, it might appear that you're really interested in your guest, and that's what you're doing everything so nicely for. but your own mind will know the motive. As a seeker, you must be true to yourself. It's not always possible for others to know and to point out your motives. Actually, it's never possible for another to know our motives. Because we're always superimposing whatever our motives would be upon the other person and imagining they're doing it for that reason. This is really the nutshell, and it remains so persistent. Even this subtle I, continuing to want to assert. So this is really the thing. Kyle said yesterday evening, did you see the post on WhatsApp? He shared it to the WhatsApp group. He said, I just need to let go of everything. The more I let go, the better it is. And we just said yes, but don't let go of yourself, capital S self. That needs to be held on to. Otherwise we end up without a rudder. Oh. In other words, don't hold on, don't let go of the ideal, don't let go of the goal, or don't let go of God, however we say it. But everything else, all this I, me, mine stuff, we have to let go of it. And the only reason is because you can't, all you want is to be satisfied. And you can't be satisfied until you let go of these unreasonable demands upon you. Upon you. It's demanding from us the impossible, that we create an environment that's always a certain way. This is really what it demands from us. And it's not possible to do it. But it is possible to change the inner world, the inner person. And so that's what we have to do. We really don't have a choice, Uma Devi. Fio is going to be as Fio is. You have an influence upon it. But as long as there's an expectation for her to be some way other than not, there will always be an arising. Yeah. Come here, dear. Okay, we'll close with final prayer. Any comments or questions on the discussion this morning? Yes, dude.
I've been taught in about 2 weeks these like and dislike.
Yeah.
Really heavily.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I've lost that. Now that I've lost, but I was able to tune in easier in alignment before. So when I down is when I fall into these storms.
Yeah.
I'm realizing.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that I was not doing it. So now that you've mentioned the comment of being in the middle, not like being able to do regardless if I like it or not, then I was trying to grasp that in the way that I would understand it.
Yes.
And I resonate with Abraham. So I tried to be like, how would Abraham will say it? And that really helped me to understand that I wouldn't have the dislike in the beginning if I would have been aligned first. So
yes,
if
correct.
I would have been in a high vibration, that wouldn't arise anyway.
That's correct. That's correct.
Mm.
And so what we're working with as a result is, since we find ourselves in the inner person, not always in that high vibrational space, then the practice has to be to tune into that pure light constantly. Yeah. And finally, never to react, because a reaction is always something that's coming from the motivation of that lower vibration. And so always to tune in until we get to the place of communion, where there's really no difference. So to stay with the light. To stay with the light.
I realize that's where the ego kicks in, because some fear rises on that, because then it's like, well, I'm not gonna get what I want then, because the ego,
right.
It's like, I really wanted that chocolate cake.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. The chocolate cake. So yes. And so it might be subtle, but it's there. The only difference really at this point is that this spiral effect is working. So you find yourself coming back to those same assertions, and the same assertions might be more subtle, but also there's a little bit of daylight between you and them, the capacity to see them and not be buffeted, not be thrown by them. And also to really recognize that, but if I say yes to you with the chocolate cake, you will become an ogre. So right now I have to say no. This is higher talking to lower. So right now I have to say no. You can't have it. Because I know what you will become if you do. In the same way that you come from a higher place with Fio and you say, no, Fio, I love you and I know what will happen if you do this. And so therefore, no. It's not best for you. I need you to trust me. But now it's an inner dialogue. Right? It's the same kind of inner dialogue. Seeing that tendency and having the wherewithal not to follow it, which is now really starting to root out those tendencies. Yes? Home. That's, by the way, that's austerity, when you start saying no to yourself more and more. And you want to say no lovingly, just as you want to say no lovingly to feel. Right? Even to yourself you want to do. You don't want to create a hateful environment inside. But you want to be connected to the light, at least enough to recognize. And it's ragadvesha. This is what we're dealing with. That's what the ego is doing. Is the ego is setting up an imaginary place where you and I are separate. And I'm also separate from what would give me happiness. And I'm separate from the light. It's setting up that scenario. And now in this scenario, of course, all we ever want is happiness. All we ever want is satisfaction. All we ever want is fullness, which is who we are. But now we're looking out. And so it sets up the whole desire tree. Yeah? And this is pretty, and that's not. And this is good, and that's not. All of this. So, renunciation really, ultimately, is renouncing that whole process. And finally, as Peace Pilgrim would say, even the feeling of being separate. Renounce it. Not me. You're not me. You're not me. I don't follow you. I know that what you're telling me is false. Oh. Anything else? We should close. Page 174 is the prayer in RT. And all this stuff. But he said, she said, but they did this. And they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And all this. Ah! And Theo's getting ready to go to school. Not today?
It's Easter holiday.
It's Easter holiday today. Oh, you're with us today. Yay! Okay, prayers. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Orai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Orai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat. You put it back in the same place. Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Orai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamam Mritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Nirahamaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Makashi Dukhabhag Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma'amritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. Humble Satguru Shivananda. And for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Oops, that was an oops for you. Okay, yes, you're forgiven, of course. Jesus forgives you. Okay, page 210 for the RT.